everybody points to as the crucial game for the U.S. If you're going to get out of that group, you got to get 3 points off of Ghana because it seems that the task against Portugal and Germany is going to be tougher. We'll talk to Gary about the Ghanaian outlook on that group, what they see as their path to the knockout rounds. Obviously, strengths, weaknesses, everything else that goes with that team. Obviously, there's a history between the U.S. and Ghana that'll play into this as well. Certainly from a media standpoint, we're all going to mention it. Remember in 2006 in the group when Ghana kept the United States from progressing. Remember in 2010 when the U.S. won their group over England and went into the knockout round and was beaten by Ghana in added time, in extra time. Remember that? That's all this stuff is going to be talked about. So we'll talk to Gary about that. I'm looking forward to that. It's 11 o'clock for that chat with Gary L. Smith. Our phone lines are open here. 347-756-6276. What this means, because special focus on Ghana and Gary, is that the first hour is completely open. It is your show right now. Now, I have some things I want to talk about. I have some fascinating stories from around the world of football that I'm all in on here. But this is certainly your show. If you have questions, concerns, comments, you want to be on the record with something, go ahead and give it to me. Let's go. Because we're getting to the point now where there's that sense of dread hanging over. I'm not saying all U.S. national team fans are doubting the possibility of getting out of the group. But there's certainly a lot of people who don't see this as a realistic possibility. I was reading this morning a piece by Noah Davis at Grantland, in which he sort of outlines how this is a transitional World Cup for the United States. That the 2018 team is one that holds a lot of promise. And we can sort of peer into the future. We can see some of the talent coming through. We can imagine the 2018 team that goes to Russia, assuming that it stays in Russia, as more talented, more capable of making some real progress at the World Cup. But unfortunately, you got to play this thing every 4 years. And if this is a transitional team, and I've said it before, I still think this is the most talented, deepest team the United States has ever taken to World Cup, doesn't mean they're going to be successful. But if that's the case, how do you view this? How do you put this World Cup in the proper context? Because we know, and this is how the soccer fan reacts, right? We know that if they fail, and getting no points is failing, certainly. If the worst possible failure is no points and no goals. I don't think that's going to happen, but stranger things have happened at the World Cup. But if that does happen, if they don't get out of the group or they simply lose every game, then the mainstream media in this country will take that as their cue, and maybe it's less than it was in 2006 or less than it was in 2000. Well, in 2002, they were relatively successful, of course. Less than it was in 98. Less than it was in even 2010. But the mainstream media will take that as their cue to dump on soccer. And I'm going to prepare you guys now, because while I do think the United States is going to be competitive, my brain says they probably won't get out of the group. So I'm going to prepare you now for the mental anguish of watching the mainstream soccer ignorant media bat your sport around a little bit. Bat around your national team. Suggest that Americans just don't play soccer well enough and aren't going to be good enough ever, and let's just stop with this nonsense. Because it will happen. There'll be somebody, the guy may be 75, and write for a dead tree outlet, but it's going to happen, and people will respond. So just prepare yourself. Take a deep breath. Because when that happens, that won't impact whether or not soccer continues to grow in the United States. Now, we can debate whether a great World Cup run from the U.S. men's national team would have any long-term impact on American soccer, and specifically on MLS and the like. But a quote-unquote failure isn't going to mean we're going to stop playing the game. Or it won't have a serious impact on how much better things will get over the next 4, 8, 10, 12 years. There is a trajectory here. It doesn't mean that every World Cup is going to be better than the last one. Clearly, we know that from experience. We have 06 after 02. We have 98 after 94, although obviously 94 was a unique circumstance. So we've been through this. If this World Cup is a quote-unquote failure, it doesn't necessarily mean anything bad for soccer. It just means you're going to have to deal with that noise. All right. In world news, Yaya Touré's birthday and the scandal and the upset it has caused. Amazing. I mentioned this yesterday. This has developed since. Yaya Touré turned 31 years old. I'm not even sure when his birthday was. When was Yaya's birthday? I should know this. It was in the last couple of days, right? Yaya Touré's birthday. On Yaya Touré's birthday, May 13th. Okay, so a week ago, a little bit over a week ago. On Yaya Touré's birthday, he did not get, apparently, according to reports, according to his agent, a handshake from anybody. That no one came up to Yaya Touré and said, "Happy birthday, Yaya. Allow me to shake your hand." We've gotten to the point now where we have almost taken a Zapruder film element to this story. I saw Brooks Peck, a friend of mine, Dirty Tackle. You all know him. You all love him. He's hilarious. I saw him tweet a picture yesterday of an airplane on which City was flying, and there was a birthday cake being wheeled down the aisle. Yaya Touré was off in his own little world wearing his headphones, probably Beats, because, hey, everybody wears Beats, doing whatever he was doing, not paying attention. But there was a cake there. Now, was it cake for Yaya on his birthday? Was it cake for the team, celebrate the season? I have no idea. But this is where we are now. We got to take pictures and try to analyze whether or not Yaya Touré was respected or disrespected, whatever. Now, the bottom line is that this is probably, because it seems so ridiculous, this is probably a pretense for a move. Will Yaya Touré go back to Barcelona? Is there something else? Maybe. And how much of this, obviously a lot of this falls at the feet of the agent. Even though Yaya has sort of backed him up and not backed him, it's a complicated situation, clearly. The message is muddled. But the bottom line is it seems like Yaya Touré is getting ready to leave City. Or is at least pushing for more respect. I don't know. I haven't listened to all of this. But this is Yaya Touré's agent on Sky Sports yesterday. Let's just take a listen to see where things are in this insanely ridiculous saga.
In club for the less money, but with more attention.
Okay, and what do you mean by more attention?
More attention when, for example, I tell you, in some club, I don't want to speak about how do in different club, but like minimum, president club call to every player personally, congratulate with birthday. Some club send flowers to his family. Some clubs do this. It's different way what possible do and to be player happy. And this is its main things. I understand maybe for the Manchester City, they don't know what is this. And but
okay, stopping it there for a second. Dmitry Seluk is Yaya Touré's agent. This is some insanity. He goes on Sky Sports and outlines the ways in which Yaya Touré is not being properly respected because other clubs do this thing and this thing and this thing. I mean, come on. Are you being paid? Look, everybody wants to be respected at their job. Is there really any doubt at all that Yaya Touré is respected for his contribution to Manchester City? They just won the Premier League title for the second time in 3 years. They are a team on the up and creating a culture, et cetera, et cetera. Yaya Touré is one of their most valuable players, if not their most valuable player. There's no doubt that he is respected by the club. Now, how important is this? The cake and the handshake and the flowers and the Ducati or the Bugatti, whatever he's supposed to be getting. How important is that really? It's insane. A little bit more of this.
They don't know what is this. Of course, relationship in Manchester, how I see, money, job, money. You understand me? But, okay, if job like this, okay, we can see and we will see what we will do.
So because of this, does Yaya want to leave Manchester City?
There we go.
See, Yaya now a lot of concentration for the World Cup. And but if, of course, Manchester City is not respect player, how player can be motivated play for this team.
Okay. Yeah, the millions of dollars that Yaya Toure is making from Manchester isn't enough, apparently, to motivate him. It's not enough. He needs these little perks. He needs these other things. He needs gifts. He needs flowers. He needs handshakes. I mean, how convenient for the World Cup to come up right now so that he can create this firestorm and put it at the feet of the agent if you want. Although, again, Yaya has sort of half supported his agent, half said, nah. But how convenient that the World Cup comes up right now so he can create the firestorm, go off to the World Cup, try to help his national team, leave it simmering, leave time for City to think about what's going on here. Perhaps put into the minds of clubs around the world who could use the services of Yaya Toure, we can come in for him. There is a crack in this armor. Let's go get it. Let's go get Yaya Toure. Amazing. This is modern football right here. This is everything that we've got going. And I'm not going to put mercenary on Yaya Toure. He is a professional soccer player with a limited lifespan, as a little limited career. Go make your money. I'm fine with that. I will defend any player's right to go and try to make as much money as possible in the limited time they're as good as they are. So that's not the issue. But this whole process, the way that he's going about it, the way his agent is going about it, I don't think it helps at all. In fact, losing a little bit of respect for Yaya. Not because he may want to move on, but because this is the manner in which they're going about it. Creating that controversy. All right. Phone lines open 347-756-6276. There's 4 minutes more of that, and I'm sure I don't even know if it was longer. This is just what I found. There's 4 more minutes of Dimitri.
If team don't respect him.
Okay. But I don't know that we can handle anymore. I don't know that we can handle any more Dimitri. By the way, I was uninformed until just now, and I apologize. Today, producer Trevor's birthday. So everybody wish producer Trevor a happy birthday on Twitter. Hey Hayward is his Twitter handle. Follow him as well. I mean, wish him a happy birthday and follow him. Does fantastic work behind the scenes to keep Soccer Morning on the air, to keep NASN going. He just went through the pain of a server move for the website. Deserves your birthday wishes. Give Trevor Hayward respect. Give him I don't think he has an agent to go out there, but give him the respect he deserves. Don't treat Trevor Hayward like Manchester City treated Yaya Toure. Give the man respect. Deserves it. All right. As I mentioned, the phone lines are open. I'll say it again. 347-756-6276. Maybe they're not open. Maybe I should open them. Maybe I forgot to put them to turn them on this morning. We'll do that momentarily, and then your phone calls be coming in. We got a bunch of chatter on Twitter here. Nugget, so the Batman Kid with 2 Ds on the head. Can you please talk about the potential 4th round matchup of Cosmos and Red Bulls and what you think the reaction will be if Cosmos win? Well, the reaction will be nanny nanny boo boo. I mean, I hate to be flip about it, but that's going to be the reaction from the Cosmos faithful, from the NASL, when it comes to what the Red Bulls will feel at, I don't know. MLS fans, a lot of them don't like the Red Bulls. I don't think they'll care too much. We know that the Cosmos are targeting that tournament. They've been saying as much. The NASL wants a Champions League berth. And if they're not going to be handed one via their league, by the way, the spring season is like almost over, right? The spring season in the NASL is over. Because there's 9 games to play in the open the first half of the year in NASL. I think the Cosmos are in trouble. I need to look. I need to look at the standings, so we can check and see where the Cosmos stand, where everybody else stands. Obviously, where the issues are in that league. I'm happy to take a look at the NASL. In fact, let me check on something right now. The phone lines are. Let me get those fired up. Let's take a quick break. Come back. We'll get into whatever you guys are interested in. We can start Lupe Fiasco being named music director for U.S. Soccer. What is that all about? Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. Stay right there. Soccermorning.com. Help the show.
Two, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
All right, back on Soccer Morning. This show, this show is a two-man operation. Yeah, I'm sure you're aware of. They're very aware of this. This show is two people. It's me on the air in front of the microphone, getting all the glory, such as it is, and it's Trevor working behind the scenes on everything else. That includes booking guests. Getting everything done with the website, getting the servers moved, and in that vein, and I've already said shoot your birthday wishes to Hey Hayward on Twitter. He needs them today because the server issues have created some miscommunication with some potential guests today. Just to pull back the curtain a little bit, I'm not going to put any names out there. Hopefully, we can reschedule these people and get them on because they will be excellent additions to the show. We are certain of Gary L. Smith's appearance at 11 o'clock. So I do have that going for me, which is nice. But there's we just had some issues here. But we are going to steam forward. Phone lines are definitely open now, 347-756-6276. We have the Lupe Fiasco news to make something of. What do you make of this? Hopefully all of you are familiar with Lupe Fiasco. If you're not, then I suppose you need a crash course. Hip-hop musician from Chicago, once played an MLS All-Star game with his sort of breakthrough hit Kick Push, if you remember that song. Been around for some time, has a reputation of being anti-establishment is a nice way of saying controversial in some ways, depending on how you look at it. Certainly when you call the president of the United States a terrorist, that's controversial. And Lupe Fiasco has done so in the past. Not too distant past. It's not been that long. He's a very socially conscious individual, which is great. I'm all for this, by the way. Let's just put that to the side. I think this is a progressive, interesting, edgy sort of move from an organization that can sometimes be stodgy. Now, again, I may not agree with everything that Lupe Fiasco says. The politics of it are pushed to the side for me because I don't imagine Lupe Fiasco is going to be creating anything for the U.S. national team that's going to be controversial. I don't think that's going to happen. Just to give you a taste of what Lupe is up to now, here's a little bit of his new single, which is just out not too long ago. It's an anti-cancer anthem. What other rapper have you ever heard of putting out an anthem against cancer? Nobody, which makes Lupe unique, which I dig. That's part of this. Let's create an image here. All right. Maybe we'll pot that down a little bit. Answer this phone call from Vince in Toronto. What's up, Vince?
Oh, hey, Jason.
You got some Lupe back in you this morning.
You know, I find it funny that U.S. Soccer picks Lupe Fiasco because it's just, I don't know. It's always like these big things always pick stars that have that everybody's forgotten about. It's kind of like the WWE when they started doing twerking after.
Whoa. Okay, so let me get this straight. And you're younger than I am, Vince, probably by a decent amount. And I'll admit that I'm not up on my music like I used to be. I mean, I created a Spotify playlist that's entirely New Jack Swing. That tells you where I'm at in terms of music right now. But you're telling me that time has passed Lupe Fiasco by already.
Yeah, I'd say so.
All right, let me just go ahead. He's distracting me. Lupe's rhymes are distracting me. You think so? So this is U.S. Soccer tapping a guy who doesn't have a whole lot of heat right now.
Pretty much. This is what always happens with these big corporations or whatever. They always try to hit pop culture, but then they hit it a little bit too late, and so everybody's like, oh yeah, that was popular a couple months ago.
Okay. I mean, again, the guy is an interesting character and has an interesting set of beliefs and is more active in social causes than most artists in his genre. Most artists, period. Most music artists, period. Does that not have something to play into this?
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I can't really comment on it because I'm not a Lupe Fiasco fan.
Okay.
So.
Well, I mean, if that's the case, then maybe, I don't know what your musical tastes are like, Vince, but maybe you're not the right guy to make this decision. I think it's interesting because, again, I mean, let me just bring this back up a little bit. This, to me, does not fit the image of American soccer. I mean, if we're gonna do stereotypes, and I'd rather not. I think this is part of this is breaking those down. But if we're gonna do stereotypes, Lupe Fiasco does not fit what you think of when you think of soccer in America, which is why I dig it, Vince.
I know. I think of the Village People.
You think of the Village People? Okay. I might think of Fleetwood Mac. Something like that. I don't know. I mean, we're joking a little bit here, but there is something to the notion that soccer in America, let's be blunt about it, is thought of as super white, super boring, not much in the way of politics. But if there are politics, I think most people would assume because it's super white and super suburban, those politics verge to the right side of things. Right?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I mean, more power to Lupe Fiasco getting his name out there some more. So
you just underwhelmed like crazy, Vince. What else is on your mind?
Oh no, Jason. I just wanted to know, if you wanted, I could talk a little Australia or Japanese football. If you wanted to learn a bit more about those teams.
All right, sure. Why not? I mean, our issue with Australia, and we've been talking about trying to profile Australia on the show. Our issue is that anybody who's there with an Australian accent, because of course that matters, Vince. That if anybody there, the timing is just impossible, right?
No, it's difficult on the other end of the world.
Is somebody choking a ferret behind you? What's happening?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, my dog's playing with a chew toy.
Okay. Well, okay. So Australia. I mean, look, I think most people would assume that Australia is one of the weakest teams in this tournament. Is there any reason to doubt that?
No, you're absolutely right. Their golden period that should have ended in 2010 is still happening for some reason.
What do you mean? What do you mean it's still happening?
Player-wise.
Right.
The players that should have retired after the 2010 World Cup are still going strong. Their team is very. I'm sorry. Let me take this chew toy away from my dog.
That's all right. Well, I might be on limited time here, so you need to hurry up and get the chew toy away from the dog. I mean, look.
All right.
All respect to Tim Cahill, if he's your leading star, and I mean, if I'm wrong about this, I'd have to look at the roster. Honestly, I'm not super familiar with Australian players. Lucas Neal, who else?
I mean, you got guys like Mark Bresciano. Lucas Neal is no longer a part of the team.
Right, he's gone. Right.
Yeah, thank the sweet Lord. He was the captain of the team, and after, I believe you'll remember in the summer, I believe, or a little bit after, Australia had like 2 friendlies, and they lost both of them 6-0. Lucas Neal kept criticizing the young players, and that probably soured him a bit. I mean, when the new coach Anje, I can't pronounce his last name, came in, he basically told him, you've been a great servant to the team, but I don't need you anymore. Mm-hmm. And so he's been left off. Tim Cahill, the thing with Tim Cahill is, despite the fact that he is 35 or 34, he's still a very good player, and he still functions very well within the Socceroo setup. The main problem with Australia was that they held on to their older players too long, and they started blooding their new players way too late. And they have a number of really good young players, but a lot of them barely have any experience with the top team. Or if they have experience with the top team, it's playing in those East Asian cups against Singapore and teams like that. So it's still they still have to learn. And I do believe that's what the coach has said, that the World Cup, they're not expecting anything really. Maybe get a point, maybe put in a good showing, but he really wants to get these young players, and that he's called in a lot of young players, and I believe a number of them who don't have any caps with the national team. And I mean, Miles Jedinak, I believe, has been named captain today, who's at Crystal Palace, has been one of the best midfielders, and he's expected to lead. I do believe it's a pretty young back line with some pretty young midfield options, and I don't necessarily know why, but it looks like they played Tim Cahill in the striker position. And so he'll be expected to lead the line there. But yeah, this is a team that's completely 100% in transition.
I'm looking at their provisional roster. You have obviously you have Tim Cahill, 67 caps. Bresciano has 73. Luke Wilkshire has 79. But then you get down to some of these guys. There's Ivan Franchik, 7 caps. James Troisi, 9 caps. Langarek, 3. Sirota, 3. Bozanic, 2. Lecky, 6. Bergitti, 1. I mean, that's a goalkeeper, but still, you definitely have, and there's a couple of guys on here with 0 caps. There's another guy, 21-year-old with 1, a 21-year-old with 9, a 21-year-old with 1, another 21-year-old with 1. Yeah, clearly there's some youth being injected into this team. And I just got done talking about the World Cup this year being a transitional World Cup for the United States, despite the fact that there is some talent and some depth. This one is going to be exceptionally transitional for Australia. All right, Vince, I got to go, man. Appreciate the phone call.
No problem.
All right, there you go. All right, let's take a quick break. I got to set something up here. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We may have an impromptu segment on the NASL and soccer in Minnesota, but I'm going to check on that. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV, soccermorning.com.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning, and join now. Yes, we told you there were some issues with communication and servers and transitioning the website, which had an impact on producer Trevor's email. But thankfully, we got in touch with Brian Korstad from Inside Minnesota Soccer, one of my long-term acquaintances in the soccer blogging world. Brian is a fantastic guy, has been covering the teams up there in Minnesota. Certainly, obviously, we've got MLS news in Minnesota. Brian, how are you, sir?
I'm very good. Good to be back on the show, Jim.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I think when we started this show, Brian, you were our go-to NASL second division guy at the time. And it's good to have you. It's been a while. It's good to have you back. I know you're a busy guy. All right, so I think we're gonna get to NASL certainly, but I want to start with the rumors flying around MLS potentially going to Minnesota. We've got Don Garber suggesting that now that the South is sort of taken care of with Atlanta, Orlando, and most likely Miami, that the Midwest is a big hole in the map that MLS would like to fill, and Minnesota makes a lot of sense. Can you give me an overview of where the groups who are vying for this potential team stand? Because I'm a little confused.
Well, let's back up a few years. We know a few years ago, we know that the Minnesota Vikings back quite some time ago were actually had mentioned occasionally MLS. Now, when they mentioned this, the Wilfs, Ziggy Wilf is the owner, and his brother Mark, they mentioned this when they were in talks about the new stadium that they wanted built. During that time, everyone thought that they were throwing it up there just to kind of get more support behind the stadium, which is, paid about 50% by the Vikings and about 50% or the other 50% is split between the city of Minneapolis and the state of Minnesota, because it is used as being cold weather state, it's used for a lot of different events, including state high school events and other such things. University of Minnesota uses it for the Gophers baseball team in the spring. So there's a lot of different uses that they need it for. Well, in this process, along came a bit in the legislation as this started to move forward, a bit of legislation, this was a year ago, last spring, that mentioned that the Vikings could, and a lot of people misunderstood this, but with this stadium deal, that they would have basically the right of first refusal to bring in an MLS team into that new stadium within 5 years after the first time that the Vikings step on that stadium, step onto that field for their first game. Now, there's one other interesting little piece about that legislation in that it says an owner of the Vikings of 3% or more. And that number always stuck with me. And as I have talked to people, I have found out that there's, or at least one reporter told me that he seemed to have kind of an in with the Wilfs that could be Jonathan Wilf, the son of Ziggy Wilf, who is actually in his late 30s. I don't know if he knows anything about soccer at all, but that he is a very low minority owner in that team, and he is also in real estate. He's an attorney. He works out in New Jersey with Ziggy's cousin, but he's also, as I said, back in Minnesota quite a bit because he is a partial owner of the Vikings. So that's that piece. Okay, can I stop you for a second? I know there's another piece, and there's a Twins element to this as well, but I some of the questions that crop up, and certainly the cynical view of an NFL owner like Ziggy Wilf talking about MLS and is essentially it seems to be about filling dates in a building that would normally sit empty during the summer months. The NFL is not a summer sport, so there's that element of it. You mentioned the 5-year exclusive window, and my question for that is now, as you sort of outlined, that doesn't start until the Vikings are playing on that field, but I'm curious as to who that applies to. Is MLS supposed to follow that? I don't understand. It's right, and that was a confusion for a lot of people. They thought it was some kind of a deal with MLS, and from my understanding, is MLS doesn't make those kind of deals. Right. They don't. The deal is only with the state of Minnesota in that stadium, that they can bring, they have right of first refusal to bring a team in there. That means nothing about anyone else bringing a team and playing somewhere else. in the state of Minnesota or in the Twin Cities or anywhere,
Okay. Again,
Yes.
it's still not completely clear, but I do think we've gotten some sort of idea of where that stands. All right, and I will add this before you go on to the other element here, but a son of an NFL owner whose name is Jonathan running a team is not something that fills me with a lot of confidence, Brian.
Well, we just don't know yet. And here's a small piece, and I would say you're right. In general, I think the majority of people around here are supportive of the other portion that I'm going to talk about in a minute, and that's Minnesota United. But I will tell you that I know someone whose father sat on a committee with Ziggy Wolf and told me that Ziggy talked a lot, actually more about European football, soccer, than he did about NFL. So, I don't know. They've been very quiet about this, and Lester Bagley is the spokesperson for them, and he is very careful in what comes out and how it comes out. And Vikings have had some issues before in the press, and so they're very, very careful, and so they have revealed very, very little about their interests. What we do know from a recent article, and I had heard these rumors, and now it's been confirmed, that they had told me personally in an article back a while ago that they really weren't going to start looking at an MLS team. They were interested, but they weren't really looking until after they got the stadium deal completed and started to get built, which is happening now. And then at that point, they'd start looking more deeply into the cost and whether they really wanted it and whether they thought it would work. That's where they're at, I believe, right now, because they just recently took a trip out to Seattle to watch the Sounders play Dallas, I believe. And they, from what I'm hearing, they have a number more trips scheduled. So for a while, some of the people around here were going, they're just saying this, they're not really interested. I've believed all along they are interested, maybe just to fill those stadiums, as you said. I'm not sure.
Okay.
And that brings us into the next step, and that's Minnesota United. As we know about, and most soccer fans at least know, about a year and a half ago, it was the Minnesota Stars, and before that it was Minnesota Thunder. And we've gone through so many teams here, and then Dr. Bill McGuire from United Healthcare fame purchased or acquired, shall we say, the Minnesota Stars, which they rebranded as Minnesota United. And the transformation in that team has been nothing short of amazing. Now, I just happened to run into the director of the Minnesota Sports Commission, which runs the kind of quasi-government, Minnesota state government organization called National Sports Center, which is where, the Stars actually own the Stars. And I ran into the executive director, Paul Erickson, a couple of weeks ago at a game, and he said, the transformation is amazing between what they had when they bought the Stars to keep them viable, when the Thunder had folded, and they started this team to bring in the NFL. It's amazing because they had like 3 full-time employees and the rest of them were shared with the NSC. And now, and he told me a budget, around $500,000. And now this team has got like 30 employees. And millions. Their budget is in the millions.
Wow.
So it's just you go to the game day experience is totally different. And this is an organization. It's Dr. Bill McGuire owns it. His son-in-law Nick Rogers is running the team, and Bill is involved every day by talking to Nick. Nick's actually the one running it. And, they've stepped on a few toes along the way, and they haven't done everything perfectly. There's been some frustration in the soccer community at times, but overall, part of that is just growing pains. And when everyone is used to this team that's not had, how can we say it, not been always the most professional because they didn't have the money. Right. They're used to things a certain way. All of a sudden they start charging for things, for tickets become not more expensive, but just done differently. They don't have the flex tickets anymore. People become frustrated. Well, that's part of the growing pains, I think. And they had to show up professionalism. There's no question about that. So now we've heard all along that Minnesota United has been interested in building a stadium, a soccer-specific stadium. The question has been, where do they have enough fan base? They wanted to kind of see if they had enough fan base to push that. A couple of sites that have been talked about are downtown at the Farmers Market, which is near the baseball field, Target Field, and near Target Center which is where the Timberwolves play. And of course, Dr. Bill McGuire actually could have been played Division I basketball. He was a great basketball player and ended up going to just focusing on school, and we can see where that took him. But he's he's got courtside seats for the Timberwolves. Big fan. Knows Glenn Taylor, the owner. So there's been an association between the Twins and the Timberwolves, and I think Dr. McGuire. And there's a group called Project, I believe it's 2020, and they have encouraged Minnesota to look at the farmers market. Well, that's very expensive land. So I think most of us would love to see, if they built a stadium, in the farmers market right downtown. It'd be a great area, and there's new development in this area called the North Loop, which is right near the warehouse district where these other stadiums are. So that sounds exciting, but we also hear rumors that they are looking to possibly build out of the Mall of America, which is about 30 minutes and about 15 miles south of Minneapolis, but it's right on the light rail transit system. So, we don't know. Will they ever build a stadium? I don't know.
Right.
I heard they're actually quite a ways along in looking at this. So the question is, they're the other entity that's been talking to other groups. They've been out to Seattle. I know that. Talked to Hanauer. They have been down to KC a couple of times.
Everybody
they
goes,
went
yeah.
with the poll ads. They I think Dr. McGuire, if they joined MLS, and they're not saying they're going to, but if they did, I think they would want to partner. And the poll ads have expressed interest publicly, have gone on record saying they would be interested in partnering with them. So there is that option. However, they're very, very careful. And I'm talking Minnesota United, very, very careful about not saying too much about actually wanting to go to MLS. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, I think they sort of like the NHL structure, that it's less structured. They can have more freedom to do what they want to. And they don't have the big, entry fee, which, let's face it, 70, 80, 90 million, it's a lot of money, for a Midwest team.
Sure.
And so there's that aspect of it. But also, Nick Rogers tweeted once, I think it was this last winter, and I think it was kind of in relation to San Antonio Scorpions when they were making some noise about the fact that they were interested in MLS, that he wouldn't have his foot in one door and in another at the same time. So in other words, if he's in one league, that's the league he's going to be in and talk about and promote. He's not going to talk about MLS if he's in there. That doesn't mean that things aren't happening behind the scenes.
Right.
So we really don't know. And this is, I'll just kind of finish up this segment with, or this portion of the MLS talk with this, and that's, I don't believe with all the other attractions here, we have all the major sports here. We have WNBA besides, we have lacrosse, we have St. Paul Saints, which is an independent league, which they're building a new stadium for in downtown St. Paul for that team. With all the other things going on here, and the summers being so short, only about 3 months, and it's a beautiful state. Everyone wants to get outside. I don't think two teams could survive here. If the Wolves did make a move to go to MLS, I don't think Minnesota United could survive. So I think it's kind of a precarious position here. Do they build a stadium? Do they get into MLS?
Right.
Do they stay? What are the Wolves going to do? I don't think anyone knows at this point, including the Wolves or Dr. McGuire.
It would seem a very risky proposition for Minnesota United to go about building a stadium with the possibility of MLS arriving sort of hanging over their head at all times. I mean, that
absolutely
doesn't seem like it would be an investment that they'd want to flush down the toilet. And if you were, Brian, the area, if you don't think two teams could survive, certainly the NASL team would suffer from not being the top division. And I'm not going to get into that debate right now about NASL's future. That would certainly be, from a business standpoint, it just can't make sense. All right, let's speaking of NASL, let's transition into talking a little bit about this spring season in NASL. We addressed it when the announcement was made that the spring season was only going to be 9 games, that the league was going to take a break for the entirety of the World Cup, and that's good. But you have to wonder about the competitive integrity of the first of the spring season. But from a Minnesota United perspective, Brian, everything's going great. 15 points from 6 games, and right now the inside track to win the spring season.
Yeah, they're looking really good. And by the way, I just want to give a shout out to MLS4MN.com. If anybody wants to keep track of what's going on with the Vikings, it's a great website. It's Major League Soccer for Minnesota with a 4, MLS4Minnesota.com. So yeah, the team is looking great right now. It's pretty exciting. These teams in the past have been known for Manny Lagos' midfield. Last year, there was no midfield. There wasn't much of any kind of attack. This year, we have good defense. We have nice attacking options. And I think the surprise to a lot of people has been this Christian Ramirez, who's a big, tall tall attacker. Played for UC Santa Barbara Gauchos for a while and went to Concordia Eagles, so not real well known, but then he played for the Charlotte Eagles last year, had 23 appearances and 8 goals, but this kid has matured. He makes great runs, and he's scoring goals. He's tied for the lead. And what's also exciting is, and you and I have talked about this player before, is Miguel Ibarra, who was drafted by Portland, and why they let him go, I'm not sure. Dangerous player. Just renewed his contract this year for a couple-year extension, I believe. This is his 3rd season with Minnesota. And just those two have each assisted on a couple of each other's goals, and just have this great combination between them. They're roommates. It's exciting. Another player that they picked up, which I think was just been maybe the biggest impact of all, has been Thiago, who's a Brazilian. We've now got about 4 or 5 Brazilians on the team, I believe. And this guy, he's about 33 years old, but he's played all over the world. He just came from the A-League most recently, and just a solid defender who is just brought a maturity to the team and solidified the back line. They're just not giving up very many goals, and that's what seemed like last year. Minnesota gave up a lot of goals late in games, and they're just not doing that. So all around, it's just there's no question they are, in my opinion, the best team so far, although New York's got a very, very good team too, and I don't know that we've seen them at their best yet, but very, very solid team this year that Nick Rogers, Manny Lagos have built for Minnesota United.
New York Cosmos in second on 12 points. The Strikers right there with them on 12 as well. And, the Cosmos are such they cast such a shadow over the league. I mean, they are a boon to the league because of the history and the name recognition, and this group that owns them now, the spending power that they bring, that we always end up sort of talking about where the league is going to go if the Cosmos become a dominant team, which they seem to be capable of, at least in terms of the money. In that sense, would it be good? And again, it's a very short spring season. It's only 9 games, but would it be good for Minnesota to beat out the Cosmos for first place in this season?
Of course it would.
Well, from your perspective, Brian, you're biased, but I mean, look, if we did a meta look at this league, I mean, I think people are honestly worried or wondering if the Cosmos become the Barcelona of NASL. Does that do anybody any good? So I imagine every bit of evidence that says other NASL teams can compete with the Cosmos. Maybe the playing field isn't level, but if you're smart and you make the right personnel choices, you can compete with them. That's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely, it's a good thing. And I have all my Google alerts set, and I'm sure you do as well. And you see it's Cosmos. Probably 10 to 1 of all the other teams combined. But it has helped the league. There's no question that the name has helped the league, but it's not. It takes other teams to make up the league. And, look at the other story backgrounds this year. Indy 11, they haven't won a game yet, but they're drawing an average of 10,000 a game. Minnesota's 3rd in attendance, I believe, this year, averaging about 5,000.
I got them at 4th, Brian, but 5,000 is right.
Oh, you're right. It is 4th. No, you're right. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's solid. I mean, we can talk about what's happening on the field. The Cosmos chasing Minnesota United, the Strikers chasing them as well. San Antonio has obviously made a lot of waves recently, not just because of the success they've had on the field, but other things as well. We obviously had the Silverbacks in the Soccer Bowl game against the Cosmos last fall. and they took a massive hit and had to turn over a lot of their players, brought in Eric Ronaldo via Skype, all of those interesting things.
That's true.
Yeah, so when we look at this, there are some interesting storylines into how the season is playing out, but we're constantly, and for me, I mean, I'll be honest with you, for me, the bigger story is how NASL fits in longer term alongside MLS, competing with MLS if that's what they want to do, in an American soccer structure that doesn't allow for teams to move between divisions. How is this going to play out? And when you've got, and I've always said that we'll get there one day, maybe, if these teams are established and long-standing and draw well enough to make it worth worth the while to go through the process. These are good numbers. Indy, obviously, straight out of the gate, lots of enthusiasm in Indianapolis. It explains a little bit about the 10,000. They'll probably be okay, even as that buzz wears off. But San Antonio still got 6,400, Tampa's 5,500, Minnesota 5,000, New York 5,000, Carolina 45. These are all good numbers for a second division league in the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of surprising to see New York actually down underneath Minnesota. And that's the story in itself this year. But Minnesota, I think you're going to see their attendance continue to go up. Tampa Bay has new owner this year. They're doing a lot of promotion that they never had the money to do before. So I think there's some fresh blood and some fresh things going on. Minnesota new owners, they really got their act together this year. Last year it was a struggle. They came in so late. So a lot of good things there. Going on in that regard, no question. And I think you're going to continue to see the attendance rise for some of these teams. I think Minnesota, for sure, you're going to see the attendance rise. And New York, it's got to, especially during summer as the weather starts to get better. So, but long term, it's interesting. I heard Miami Ultras podcast the other night. I was listening on Monday night, good podcast, and talks a lot about the NASL, and they had Aaron Davidson on the other night. And it's interesting because I enjoy listening to Aaron Davidson, quite frankly, a lot more than I like listening to Bill Peterson, the commissioner. And I think Bill Peterson has rubbed a lot of people the wrong way because he says one thing one time and something else the next. And Aaron's always pretty straight. I know some people isn't always their favorite, but he's pretty honest about things. He was complimenting the USL the other night, and what they've done, and he just says we're not. And I understand this move. I talked to David Downs about this back when they made this move, but he says we're not a feeder league. That's not what we are. It's not what we wanted to become. It's not what the owners wanted, and it wasn't their vision. And I understand why they were offered the same deal that USL was back a couple of years ago, and they turned it down. And I understand that. Now, to go up in direct competition, that's another thing. But there's enough cities that, and I love it when I hear them saying, we just want to be the best that we can be in the cities that we're in. And I don't think anybody has a problem with that. Everyone encourages that, thinks it's great. Where they can go from there, who knows? But I think that when you start hearing these comments that they're kind of in direct competition, it just seems kind of silly when they've had their director of operations out in California, their media relations guy in Boston, and their the commissioner in Florida, along with a couple other employees, and that's it, compared to what MLS is today and how many employees they have. So they got a long ways to go, not necessarily from the team's aspect, but from the league aspect.
Yeah.
So, but I think there's lots of positive things on the horizon for this league if they just keep focusing exactly on that, on being the best teams they can be with good owners, which they're getting more and more of owners with money. I think there's a high bar set for them that they can reach.
For me, it was always, when it comes to Bill Peterson, it was, okay, let your league and the quality and the attendance, let all the things you're building do the talking. If there's going to be competition, that will happen organically. You can't just declare yourself in competition with MLS. It doesn't work that way. The NASL has obviously taken some steps to get themselves out there. The ESPN3 deal, which I've heard is buying time, but that's what you have to do when you want to get your product in front of eyeballs. And we've seen some positives. Now, the other wrinkle here, Brian, and I don't have a lot of time to go into this because we're going to talk about Ghana with Gary L. Smith in a minute, but the traffic sports entry into the Copa Centenario and all of these marketing rights for CONCACAF sort of in opposition to some, because whether the leagues are in competition with each other, those organizations, the marketing outfits, some and traffic, are certainly in competition with each other.
They certainly are. And they won the rights back a number of years ago, and they've gotten more rights again for marketing the CONCACAF stuff that some used to have. That cuts into them a lot, cuts in, into some's the money they were making. So that certainly is competition between those two organizations, no question about it.
Brian Korstad, follow him. What is the handle? I follow you, so I don't really pay attention anymore. Brian, what is it?
It's I Am Soccer News. Is my Twitter handle.
There you go. That's Brian Korstad. He's been up there in Minnesota doing yeoman's work on soccer there. Been covering the lower divisions probably better than anybody else for a long time. And I know you're not as active as you used to be, Brian, but you're still a great resource. Appreciate your time.
It's been fun being on the show. Thanks, Jason.
Right, Brian Korstad then. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll grab Gary Smith from Ghana to talk about the Ghanaian national team as they head towards a World Cup. Can the United States beat them? What do the Ghanaians think about the U.S.? Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV, soccermorning.com. Stay there.
Motel alone, their corporate plexus ringing in my ear.
Now they love my style. If they couldn't see me then, I bet they see me now.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning, Wednesday edition of the program. We're steaming quickly towards a World Cup. Camps are starting all over the world. Some of them have already started. One of those that is of particular interest to U.S. men's national team fans in this country is that of Ghana. And to talk about Ghana and their World Cup preparations, we have Gary Smith on the line. Gary, how are you, sir?
Doing well, thank you.
So Ghana is now in training. Things have started. I have to ask you about this particular squad. There's certainly a lot of talent here. In this country, a lot of the focus is on the Ghanaians because it's the first game in the group. And if the United States is going to get out, they have to beat Ghana. We know about the history, the last two times. What does Ghana make of the U.S. squad?
Well, not much is known and has been said about the U.S. squad released by Klinsmann a couple of weeks ago. However, I mean, there's the feeling that, it will be suicidal to think that having beaten the States twice already in past World Cups, it can be done easily again. So the feeling here is much of cautious optimism, but also of a lot of respect. And also, there's a recognition that the squad of 2006 that the U.S. brought under, was it Claudio, Bruce Arena, and then 2010 that was brought again. Are extremely different, and that Bradley are extremely different from the squad that's coming from Jürgen Klinsmann. Also, there is the notion that some of the players who were young then are more experienced and can do even more damage. Speaking of Donovan, speaking of some of the EPL contingent like Josie Altidore, like Dempsey, and others. So there's a lot of respect for the U.S. national team. However, I must say that there's also the feeling that if there's one team that is beatable in that group among USA, Germany, and Portugal, it must be the US.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's Portugal and Germany on a different level. There's no denying that. As I look at the call-ups here, I believe this is a 26-man roster that has been called in, so there will be 3 cuts at some point. I don't know if they're all training. There's talent. Again, there's talent throughout. These players, unlike the American players, are in some of the biggest clubs in the world. What are expectations for Ghana in this tournament? Whether it's about beating the United States in that first game or not, is it enough to get out of the group stage again and out of the group stage this time, or do they need to replicate what they did in 2010? Where do things stand for expectations with Ghana?
Well, expectations are pretty decent and average, not really sky high, but there is the realization that, look, pound for pound, every Ghanaian player in the team, in about 80% to 70%, can stand with the best players in the world and can do a lot of damage to the team. So what's happening is that if you look at the midfield in particular, people have the realization that if it's Michael Essien, if it's Andre Ayew, if it's some of the players in the world are playing in the biggest clubs in the world, and so based on that, they can be able to do some damage. However, it's just a question of psychology. And yesterday, I interviewed the coach and saying that he was in England earlier this year to join Liverpool for sort of an internship stint, and he felt a bit overawed by the kind of technology and the advancement he was seeing. But that said, he didn't want to feel that it was going to impact negatively on his preparations for the World Cup. So it's here and there, but the expectations are pretty high. I mean, everybody seems to think that the team are going to get out of the group as a basic, because even from the Football Association point of view, they are saying that the least they'll take is a quarter-final finish. And so if the FA are saying that, then you can imagine what the populace are saying.
Look, we know players like Kevin Prince Boateng, Asamoah Gyan, Suleiman Tari, Michael Essien. These are players we know, we're familiar with on this side of the world. Where is the player or players you think could have a breakout tournament, surprise some people, perhaps aren't playing at places like Milan and Juventus, that could do some damage in this tournament?
Well, probably the name you'd have to look up forward to is Abdul Majid Waris. He's the player in the shadow Asamoah Gyan up front. Had a breakout season in the qualifiers for Ghana, scored some crucial goals, and also went to France. And apart from Zlatan Ibrahimovic, he has scored more goals in 2014 than any other player in France. So that's saying something. Apart from Zlatan, no other player has scored more goals per game than Abdul Majid Waris. A very young guy, very well educated, gone through an academy system, also played in the UK, educated also at Hartlepool College in the UK as well. So extremely well balanced in terms of intellect and how he reasons. And you can tell from the way he plays that he's a very sharp guy indeed. So if there's any player that you should look out for, it should be Abdul Majid Waris. I don't think that you can say that Kobe Asamoah is a player you should look out for, because everybody has known about him for a while.
Yeah, the midfield, again, littered with names we know. The forwards, names we know. I'll admit I'm not as familiar with Ghana's defenders, and that leads me to a question about where the weakness is. Is there a weakness in this squad that can be exploited? Certainly, Portugal and Germany will have the quality to do so, and if the United States decides to play differently than they have in the last 2 World Cups, where's that crack in the armor for Ghana?
Well, the biggest problem with the squad that was named, and you mentioned the 26-man squad that was named, I should also say that a couple of days ago, 4 players were named and then on the standby list. So you have a 26 and a 4-man standby list. So that's the way it's looking. But even of all those 30 players, the provisional plus the standby, the defense is the biggest problem because there's a severe lack of experience there. Yes, it's true that the 8 defenders that were named in the squad, you have about 4 who have played an average of 2 African Cups of Nations. 1 or 2 have played in the last World Cup. However, there is still that senior shortage because bulk of them don't get a lot of playing time at their clubs, and even if they do, it's not at the biggest clubs in the world. So there's that worry that you don't have a commanding presence at the back end, that you have all of them within the age group of 22 to 25 going into a World Cup. You know, that can be extremely suicidal. But unfortunately for Ghana at the moment, it's the best we have. And so it's best to do the best we can out of a bad situation if we get them. But the great thing about those defenders is that they are young and extremely hungry, and you never know. I mean, sometimes you just take these tournaments able to bring out the star in them. Certainly, if you look at one name like John Boy, the first time he was given a try in an African Cup of Nations, people really didn't feel like, okay, he was a good player, but then he had a standout tournament. You had Jonathan Mensah, who was also given a try a couple of years ago, and he had a standout tournament. So probably, having gone for a couple of African Cups of Nations and a World Cup and all that, I mean, it may be the time for them to step up.
Certainly those regional tournaments, and the African Cup of Nations a strong regional tournament, but it's different from the World Cup. And we're going to see players across the globe who have starred on that level get their chance to star on the World Cup level. It'll be a different stage, certainly. When we're talking about the way Ghana plays, because this is obviously one of the narratives that leads into the tournament. The United States is sort of shifting how they play, and it's why I mentioned it. The 2010 team sat back, looked for the counter. The same thing in 2006. Both of those teams were more likely to play reactive football than proactive football. When it comes to Ghana, what will they attempt to do, and will it depend on the opponent? Will they play differently against the U.S. than they will against Portugal or Germany?
Well, that is what we don't know, and that is what the worry has been about our current coach, that people feel that he's not been able to show that he can vary his style, you know. But certainly, I mean, in the last qualification game against Egypt in Cairo, I was there as well, and you saw a very defensive game that the team played, which I haven't seen in a while. But they are going to like to play attacking football and like to play on their strengths, which is inevitably the midfield. However, this time, looking at the kind of opposition, and if it is even any indication, if you look at the 26 players that have been called, it goes to show that perhaps this time, Ghana is going to play 3 different games against USA, Portugal, and Germany. But on the basis of it, I mean, usually you expect a straight 4-4-2 that will vary.
I seem to have lost Gary. Understandable a little bit that we lost Gary there. But good stuff. I'm not sure we're going to go back through the process of getting him back on the air. I'll check with Trevor to see if that's something we want to do. But we can certainly move on. All right, let's go. Let's go ahead and see if we can get him back on the air. Gary Al-Smith was our guest based in Ghana, giving us an overview of the Ghanaian national team. Let's just quickly see if we can reestablish this connection. Again, the names that jump out here. Let me see if I have Gary back. Gary, are you with me? I have a connection, but I don't seem to have Gary. All right, we'll try this again here momentarily. The names that stand out are the names you know. I mean, clearly, Kevin Prince Boateng, Asamoah Gyan, even though he's playing in the Middle East, he's going to stand out. He's certainly a talented player. Michael Essien, everybody knows Michael Essien. Soli Montari, Kwaito Asamoah from Juventus is on this list. He's a player that's not quite as prominent as those other names, but is of significant talent. But then you get to the defenders. And again, I'm admitting my ignorance here, but you have players in the championship at Rennes, John Boy, mentioned by Gary there. Jonathan Mensah at Evian. You have a player in South Africa called into this team. I'm not sure if he's going to make it. I don't know where Esperance is, so there's that as well. Harrison Aful at Esperance. I'm not sure, again, is it the defending good enough? Tunisia or Morocco says football manager man Trevor Hayward.
Hello.
Hi, Gary. I'm sorry about that. We seem to have dropped your call there.
No problem. I'm okay.
All right, we'll just sort of keep you for a couple more minutes. So we sort of talked about expectations. We talked about the style. I believe you were in the middle of talking about how Ghana will play, and there being some question over that. Is there a sense that the Ghanaian program has a direction?
Is there a sense that, sorry, I didn't get that?
Is there a sense that the Ghanaian national team program has a direction and is headed somewhere and is progressing?
Oh, yes. I mean, there's been progress. Even if you look at the World Cup from 2006, definitely there's progress. Unlike some of the African countries, you can see that certain players are making the step up, and they are consistently in every tournament from 2006, and they are going to be growing into their late 30s before they fade out. And so they form the core team of the side, and once they are delivering and are playing in clubs around the world where they get regular playing time, they are there. And then from a youth level, you can also see the consistency. 2009 World Youth Championships. Last year, the under-20 team went all the way in Turkey, did so well, and only faltered in the last four. So there is progress. Under-17 team doing well. The team, under-20 team has also qualified for the next African Youth Championships, and they are currently in the qualifiers. They are almost there. So there is progress, and there is a plan. If there is any blip, it's maybe that the biggest criticism is that the local league is not getting a lot of attention because of several reasons that we can't exhaust here.
Mm.
So if there is any criticism, it's that the local league is not getting it. And the biggest, if you like, symptom of that is that in the entire 26-man squad that has been named, it's just one reserve goalkeeper, definitely, who will not, if things go properly for Ghana, will not get any time in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
So just one player has been made here from the local league. But apart from that, I mean, in every country you have criticism. But if you compare it to even some of the best countries in the world, Ghana has a pretty good conveyor belt of players coming through who are going to replace the ones who are retiring and all.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, coming off a semifinal appearance, the bar is now high for Ghana. They have taken a step that hasn't been taken by an African nation before, and I wonder how much of the memory of 2010 and the way that game against Uruguay went is what effect that has on the squad, if it's something that gets talked about at all.
Well, yesterday training started officially for the team and preparation began. Just 24 hours ago, they started training. Right now, they'll be having their second day of training. Yesterday, I mean, apart from the normal players kicking the ball and all, I was looking for the other signs, the unspoken, non-verbal cues that in the team, body language of the coaches, the players. And if there's anything different about the team now, is that the confidence is not so overt. It's just under the radar. There's some quiet confidence about the team, as if they know what they want and they'd rather keep quiet and go and do what they have to do there. Because the build-up to the World Cup here, there's been a lot of bashing of the team's management because of especially the financial issues, the budget and how much they are taking to the World Cup. If you follow the world news, Ghana is in a bit of an economic slump at the moment. The currency has devalued by about a fourth, so there are some serious economic challenges going on down here. And for the team to be taking almost $9.8 million to the World Cup, a tournament of just 4 weeks, it's pretty serious. And so the boys are aware of this, and they know that they are taking big amounts of money as bonuses. They are taking up to $100,000 each for appearing at the World Cup, and then they will take a $15,000 bonus each for each match won, if that is the case. So they understand the pressures that are swirling around them at the moment, and they understand that it is for their own good if they remain quietly confident, if they don't appear to be too pompous, if they don't appear to be in your face, but just quietly come, train, go out there, go to Brazil, face USA, face Germany, Portugal, get out of the group. Trust me, the biggest relief for all these players will come not when or if they have beaten the USA or beaten Germany or Portugal, but the day they get out of the group, that is when the players will be relieved. Because anything short of that And there are a lot of heads that are going to be rolling. Definitely.
I will finish. I will let you go after this question, Gary. I've Vince on Twitter wants to know what Ghana makes of Kevin Prince Boateng, a player who was obviously very good in the World Cup in 2010, retired internationally, and is now back in the team. How does his yo-yo approach to international soccer? How does that cause? What kind of impact does that have on his relationship with the Ghanaian fans?
Well, the fans have gotten used to it now. I mean, it's taking time to sink in that, there's a lot of talk here that no player is bigger than the national team. And that is what has been said from the time he came and he retired and all that. But over time, and with several examples around the world and with several situations where even Michael Essien has gone in and out of the team, sometimes when he wants, the fans have just come to understand that, look, certain players have different constitutions when it comes to their bodies, and they simply need a different training regime. I think the message has sunk in now. If you don't believe it, Kevin Prince Boateng will not be here for the entire time the team will be in Ghana for the training. He's going to join the team in Holland. Galatian is also joining the team in Holland. They are not coming down, even though their leagues have ended, So, and nobody's complaining about it because they just understand that there are certain players that must be not treated differently, but because of the ways their systems are, their clubs are, and things like that, you just have to give them the leeway and bring out the best in there, because at the end of the day, it's the results that you want. You keep bashing players like Kevin, then he comes in the final World Cup qualifier against Egypt. He's brought in as a sub, and 5 minutes later, he scores the winning goal. I mean, he's going to shut you up all the time. when you have come to understand that there are players who must be treated differently because they merit it.
When you have a player of that level of talent, there is just, you have to make some sacrifices on those sort of issues. Certainly, Gary L. Smith. Follow him on Twitter. It's just his name, Gary A.L. Smith. Looking forward to June 16th in USA Ghana. Thank you very much for your time, Gary. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right,
it's great to meet you.
Excellent. Right. Hopefully we'll be able to get Gary back at some point. Obviously closer to USA Ghana, perhaps in the aftermath of USA Ghana, depending on how that game goes. That's the game everybody points to in this country. Clearly, it's the game that Ghana is circling as a must-win when you have the top two of the top three teams in the world, two of the top five teams in the world in the group. You got to look at the team that's outside of that and say that's the team we have to beat if we're going to make it through. Ghana and the United States eyeing each other as they've done over the last two World Cups. All right. We're closing out this show, last 10 minutes of the program on a Wednesday. 347-756-6276 is the phone number. Be curious about a couple of things. Open questions. What do you make of Ghana? If you want to talk a little bit about that, Gary's report there, his preview of what they'll bring, what they're going to look like, some questions over exactly how they'll play, whether or not they'll make adjustments for the United States, and then Germany and Portugal. The Lupe Fiasco news. How do American fans feel about that? Lupe Fiasco being named the music director for U.S. Soccer. In fact, let me open up the press release here, because I think there's some interesting the way that it's being framed. They also named him art director, by the way, Futura, who I'm not familiar with. I'm not really that into the art scene, but seems like a pretty cool guy. They have named Lupe Fiasco. They call him just Fiasco in the press release. He'll collaborate with U.S. Soccer in a variety of areas during the send-off series in the World Cup. He will be creating Spotify playlists in collaboration with the DJ group, the Sound Class, SNDCLSH, no vowels, and handle in-game music programming during the send-off series. It sounds a little bit like glorified DJ work, but I'm not quite sure. Isaac in Pittsburgh's on the line. What's up, Isaac?
Hey, Jason, we were talking about the World Cup, and you brought up failure at the beginning of the show, and it got me thinking that potentially more than half of the final World Cup roster could come from MLS, but for those players and fans of MLS, we're kind of stuck in a damned if we do, damned if we don't situation.
Yep.
Like, what I mean is, if we fail at the World Cup, it'll be because of the MLS players, and if we have some measure of success there, it'll be in spite of the MLS players.
Oh, absolutely. But that's just a lot of MLS. And I don't think people should worry too much about that until MLS is spending 20, 30, $40 million a year on their salaries. And there's an honest to God belief that they could compete with, certain levels. I mean, certainly Mexico would be the first bar that they have to get over in the Champions League to prove that they're on that level. Until that happens, people are just going to hate on MLS. That's absolutely fine. I mean, you can't go more than a couple days without Deadspin taking a shot at MLS. I don't give a crap, Isaac. I don't care. I don't really particularly like their soccer coverage anyway. So why am I worried about it? Why am I worried about whether or not Deadspin comes down on MLS? There's always going to be those people. Doesn't make a difference.
That's true, but what I wish people would realize is that, I did a little research a year or two ago, and I found that, and I don't have the exact figures on hand, but I found that in our much celebrated 2002 World Cup campaign, the players, most of the players who made it on the field, they had spent most of their careers in MLS up to that point. Now,
Sure.
I'm not saying that we MLS hadn't and still doesn't have a hurdle to clear, but I think it does a lot of good with team chemistry because these people have been playing with and against each other for like several months before getting called up.
You're talking about. I mean, part of the thing is Isaac, and I got Byron on the line, so I'm gonna let you go. But part of the thing is those are distinctly different eras, and you have to look at the context. Yeah, that 2002 team was a lot of MLS players, but the reason it was a lot of MLS players is because there wasn't as much of an interest in Americans in other leagues. I mean, Claudio Reyna was playing out of the country. You had John O'Brien at Ajax, obviously, but for the most part, those guys were in MLS because nobody else wanted to take a shot at them. You had Landon Donovan, who obviously came back home from Germany and everything else. But I don't think you should look at the number of MLS players in 2002, compare it to the number of MLS players in 2014, and pretend all things are equal. They're clearly not. Byron, you're on the line.
Hey, what's up, Jason?
Hey, what's up, Byron?
I just wanted to comment on the Ghana thing.
Sure.
It's kind of funny because I thought the exact thing that you said about I thought about it. I've seen this Ghana roster and I've seen their defense. And I mean, it's not like I watch a lot of Ghana players, in Europe, but I see these guys and I don't know. I mean, I know their midfield is amazing as well as their attack, but I look at their defense and I mean, when I look at these clubs, and there's nothing really impressive.
Well, I mean, again, I think we should be careful. I mean, look, we're American, we're U.S. national team fans.
Yeah, again, we don't know them.
We should be careful about judging anybody based on the club, but there's clearly a divide. When you're talking about this is the clubs listed for the defenders called up into the Ghana squad. Panathinaikos, which is a Greek team, Standard Liège in Belgium. Esperance, which I'm being told is in Tunisia. Leicester, which just got promoted to the Premier League after this season, the Championship. Rennes, which is in France. Evian in France. Kisha Spor, which I'm guessing is Turkish. And then Mamelodi Sundowns, which is a South African side, as far as I'm aware. None of those clubs jump off the page and go, well, that must be a player of immense quality. Now they could be young and they could be developing, and we shouldn't judge them just based on their club. But then you get to the midfield: AC Milan, Juventus, Udinese, Marseille, Middlesbrough, Rubin Kazan, Parma. These are quality clubs of amazing, those are great clubs in those leagues. And then there are obviously the forwards, and we can't judge Asamoah Gyan by his club anymore because he's not playing in a big club. He's playing in UAE, I think. Schalke, obviously, for Kevin Prince Boateng's the show, for Jordan Ayew. So like, it's not just a flat, well, the clubs mean their defense isn't good, but there should be questions, and we got it backed up by Gary there.
Yeah, true. And one other thing, about the defensive situation in the U.S. I know a lot of people are like quick to, jump on, the Omar, criticizing train, but I'm not actually too convinced on Beasley either.
Okay.
I know. He's been solid, but I've looked at some of his performances, and I mean, he's not the most experienced guy out there either. And, there's been some games that I've seen, and I'm just a little bit unsure as well.
Okay.
I mean, doesn't have much experience either.
No, nobody does. I mean, there's the defenders for the United States do not have experience except for Clarence Goodson, who went to a World Cup but did not play in a World Cup. You obviously don't have anybody else with World Cup experience as far as I can remember. Michael Parkhurst on the 2010 team? I don't recall.
No.
He was not. So there you go. There's a gap, but you can't do anything about it. I mean, I don't think that Oguchi Onyewu is the answer at this point. I don't think Carlos Bocanegra should be in this team at this point in his career. So where are you going to get that? There's going to be a gap, and this is why we talked about this potentially being a transitional World Cup for the United States. And whether or not that means they're going to fall flat or that they can surprise because these guys are going to go in with a sort of enthusiasm. I mean, we don't know until the games are played. We just don't know exactly what they're going to put out there. Appreciate the phone call, Byron.
All right, thank you.
All right. Just a couple of minutes left in the show. Thank you very much to everybody who called in and tweeted. Soccer Morning on Twitter, soccermorning.com. I'll reiterate what I said at the top of the show. We need your help to keep going. We really do. In order to keep this this concern happening every weekday morning from 10 to 11:30 a.m. Eastern, we need your help. Listener supported. Think of it as NPR for soccer, except without the boring parts. This show's not boring like it. I like NPR. I listen to some NPR. I'm just saying, there's some boring stuff happening on NPR. Let's just say it that way. This is a little more sports talk radio. I'll call this smart sports talk radio about soccer. I think that's fair, right? We're smart here. We're not the idiots on your local on the local fan or whatever. Not quite that level. We talk about soccer. We're pretty smart, but we're not NPR. But we're treating this as an NPR type of program where we need your support. Soccermorning.com. You can see how far along we are in the push for our goal. It's really bad right now. It is what it is. Hopefully some of you guys can step up. And again, thank you to everybody who has done so already. Thank you very much to Gary Al Smith for his information on Ghana. That's going to be the one we're all circling again for the United States heading into the World Cup, June 16th. June 16th, when I hope to be taking that game in with a lot of U.S. fans somewhere in this country. We'll see what happens with that. All right, I think that's going to do it. And Brian Korstad as well. I forgot about Brian. Thank you very much to Brian for his insight into MLS potentially going to Minnesota and NASL as well. All right, that's it. Am I good? Go to iTunes, ratings and reviews. The site's up. You should be good on all of your podcast needs. And if you're not, let us know and we will fix it. All right, guys. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.